It's Thursday. I miss Thursdays all week long. Every time I think I want to say something or talk to somebody, and I got showed something today that is so funny, and another thing which was profound, and what was profound to me was that's the cat walking around in the shadow there, is the part we're talking about here when I was trying to say what the point of the six suffers are. We are on number 5 and 6 today, but I don't know. I might only get through 5, but let's look at this because I don't want you to feel like, oh, I have to do all this suffering all the time, every day, you know. No, see, the six sufferings are the ultimate goal is to be a minister. And when I realized that, I wanted to tell you there are two basic ministries. There's the ministry that's within your arm's length, and that is family, friends, whoever is in your realm, your world. You may say, well, I don't need to know all these things, and I'm not going to go through all this. Well, if you want to be Paul, if you want to be a minister to many, then these are very, very necessary, and you have to go through them, and you have to conquer them. Now, if you're just going to be, arm's length, if you feel like, I'm not called to the world, please explain to me why I should even be paying attention to all this suffering. I don't want to deal with all this suffering. I just want to be, Joe and Jane, raise a family, Christian. I go to church. I give to business. My business gives to my ministry. We give. We're a blessing. Then this is still good for you. Don't feel like you have to be a part of the fivefold ministry, and all of that in order to say, well, this is worth all this suffering, or I have to do all this suffering, or why so much suffering, and and why has my cat decided that today is the day I want to rub up against you and say thank you for all that you do for me. Now, that's the profound part. I want you to understand that these six sufferings, you're going to deal with them. And whether you're dealing in just arm's length ministry or worldwide ministry, but if you're going to be receiving revelation, and like, for instance, the Bible says, if you're a teacher, if you're called into the ministry, you are under more scrutiny. From which much is given, much is required. You're going to go through it more. So I will tell you that the six sufferings are more intense and complete and understandable when your goal is, I want to reach this world. I want to, make a difference. I want to have an understanding. Now, the reason I say that is because of what Paul says today. And we're going to go to, in this number 5, and these are not in particular order. I may put them in order when it comes to trying to put them in a book or something, but they are not in any particular order. And now the Husky wants to get up. So I hope someone has brought their coffee with them this morning. This is the best time of day, prayer time, study time, and then I wanted to tell you, I got to tell you now, I was going to save this for later, but I want to tell you another funny thing that has to do with the six sufferings. And this fit right in. I was just sitting here going over my notes, getting ready to start, and I looked across from me and I saw my refrigerator. And I was thinking about how, it's not frost free, and that, every once in a while I have to thaw it out a little bit to get the ice out of it. But the lower part, it has a little trough in there in the back of the refrigerator, so that the back of the refrigerator can be wet, gets that, iced tea effect, and runs down the back of the inside of the refrigerator, gets collected in this little trough at the bottom, and goes out of a hole, goes in a hole that goes down to where the compressor is, and the compressor has that blower and the heater, and evaporates it, and it, basically you don't have to worry about emptying out the tray of water. Does that make sense to everybody? Everybody's done that, right? Everybody's got a refrigerator. So how does that even come close to the 6 sufferings? Well, it just came to me that part of the sufferings is the same as a frost-free refrigerator, because what does a frost refrigerator have to do? It has to cycle, I think once a day, maybe twice, but for sure once a day, it gets hot. The heater comes on, the compressor stops, the heater comes on, and the heat goes by the refrigerator and heats up where the coils are all frozen. Because you know how those coils in a refrigerator, you've seen those stand-up freezers and things like that. The coils just become a complete Arctic shelf of snow. But this thing has a heater, and that heater heats up once a day and causes all of that ice to melt and drip off. That's why it's called frost-free, because once a day it heats up. So I just want to let you know that every day there is going to be some kind of heat. There is going to be some kind of pressure that's going to happen, something that's going to test you on a daily basis. Because number one, and most important, you don't want the buildup, because you become more inefficient. You don't want the buildup of the world. You don't want the buildup of your flesh. You don't want the coating and the crustiness of a bad attitude or anything coming upon you. And so in order to remain free to love, free to give, free to talk, free to speak, to remain capable of forgiving everyone that might hurt your feelings, you have to be tested every day. You have to get heated up somewhere. You're going to be tested every day. And during that time of testing, whatever has been trying to accumulate on your life, whatever been trying to get on you that day, is actually trying to say, I need to get, whatever's, if you're angry, that means you've got an issue. You've got a broken heart. You've got an offense, and it's causing you to have a buildup. And this buildup, when the heat comes, is going to break it off. Something's going to come to break this off to you. And I think the biggest trouble we have is that we kind of resist it. We think, oh, this is another test. Well, no, it's actually to release you from the test you're coming through. I can't think of a good example right now. I'm thinking of like the water up against a dam has got a lot of pressure against the dam. When the pressure gets too much, they raise the gates and release the pressure so that the dam doesn't break. And so then when you're having a lot of anger, or you're having a lot of frustration or unforgiveness, or anything's going through you, don't think of it like, okay, I used to think, I've got to control this. I've got to make the dam higher. I've got to control this. Just the other day, I said to Joy something about, I am dealing with this emotion again. I was at that point thinking, oh, I've got to control this, but actually what it was I need to release this. I need to open the gate and let the pressure off. Now we're all thinking, no, we can't let that show. Oh, no, we can't let that out. Oh, we can't. Don't be angry to get over angry. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is recognize The reason that the anger is coming out, or the frustration or the bitterness is coming out, is because it's trying to be released. The Holy Spirit is trying to show you it needs to be released, that it's in there. Okay, when you're looking up at a dam, you don't know how much water is behind that dam. You don't know if it's full to the top and ready to overflow, or if it's empty back there. But if it starts to open the gates and release some water, you're like, oh boy, it's getting high back there. They're letting out the water. They're opening the gates. So at that point, when you start to see something come out of you, instead of saying, oh, I got to control that, I got to shut that down, I can't let that happen. No, you're thinking, well, I'm just going to let it out. I'm going to be angry and get over it. No, then you'll get washed away in the flood. What you want to do is recognize there's an issue. Okay, I'm seeing an overflow of frustration today. I'm seeing, okay, I'm angry. What am I really angry about? I'm not angry about this. There was one time my wife said something to me. Oh yes, and I can't remember the exact words, but it basically boiled down to, what are you really mad about? Oh, you're madder than I made you. That was my exact statement to her. Wow, you are madder than I made you. And then she caught herself and said, yes, that's right, because what I had just allowed, as far as, the phone getting cut off, we're talking early 90s here, when you only had a home phone, and if you didn't pay your phone bill, it would get cut off. And so I had been late on the phone bill, and it got cut off. And so she was like very upset about that, because it made her feel trapped and unable to communicate. And if there was a problem, she couldn't call somebody, and totally legitimate. We were struggling at that time, or coming through something, I don't know, whatever it was, or I was just slack and forgot. And but I said, you're madder than I made you. And then she realized then she told the story of how this had happened before to her. And because it had happened before, she was now recognizing what was happening then, and the two combined for the anger now and the anger back then, combined to an anger that was really big and madder than I made you. So then I learned to be very sensitive. When she's upset, it may not even be me. It might be something that happened before that's being triggered now, and not to get all upset, like, why? Oh, I didn't make you mad. I just, ooh, you're madder than I made you. And so in the same way, I recognized her anger, her upsetness, and instead of saying, you need to control that, you need to put that down, I said, let's look at this. What's going on here? And that's exactly what I'm trying to say with these suffers. These suffers are to bring out the things that will hinder your ministry. These suffers are to bring out the things that will stop the effectiveness of you in your arm's length ministry to your family, because it'll cause a lack of testimony or trustworthiness, and at the great length of your arms to the whole world. As you can see, ministries are always, coming up. Some ministries are going down. Everything is involved with who's touching you, who's giving you advice, who's involved in your life. And if you don't have that sourced correctly, then you have to adjust to what they're doing. Because I'll tell you, we're seeing what's happening right now with this world, that God said, before I judge the world, I'm going to judge the church. And I thought that meant back in the 90s, back in the 80s, back in the 90s. I saw God begin to judge the church. And I was thinking, okay, God's starting to judge the church. The end times are coming. Boy, that was just the beginning. There were ministries back then just getting started that are now failing, 20 years later. And they just thought they were the greatest thing when they started out, and they were doing so much good, and now they're not. Now they're failing. And they're failing because they didn't follow the 6 suffers. They didn't follow the understanding that, well, their desire is, I don't have to go through this anymore. I became important. I became a minister. I became this, and I went through all this so that I wouldn't have to go through it anymore. No, you have to go through frost-free every day. Every day you have to be defrosted. Every day you have to have layers taken off. Every day you've got to deal with something. And anyway, that was a long introduction, and now I'm sure I won't get done with today. But oh my, halfway through. So let's get to number 5, and that way we can look at 6 next week, and then a wrap up. Because I'd like to put all 6 of them together. Maybe we could even get them in order. But I really don't think. I think God uses these at whatever you need at the moment. It's not like he goes this one, this one, this one, this one. No, I think he picks, okay, you need to deal with that one today. You need to deal with that one today. So let's not put them in order. Anyway, so today is the suffering of more of a physical suffering, Paul's thorn in the flesh. Reading out of the Jeremiah Bible, lest I should be exalted above measure by the abundance of revelations, a thorn in the flesh was given to me, a messenger of Satan to buffet me, lest I be exalted above measure and get prideful. Concerning this thing, I pleaded with the Lord 3 times that it might depart from me. But the Lord said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. So God was saying, your goal is not to be the rock, the solid, I can handle everything. Your goal is to recognize and be strengthened knowing that you're weak. Now, why is that? Pride. There was a minister back in the 1950s that had a healing gift, and God gifted him with a gift of healing, and he could pray for people, and their rheumatoid arthritis would just crackle and break, and they would straighten up, and they would be healed, and some would get healed quickly, and some would get healed over time. But the pastor that told me the story of this said that one day in the pulpit, as he was healing people, and he had gone through a line of people, he said, the world is at my feet. And that very same pastor met with him a year later, completely crinkled and curled up in a hospital bed with rheumatoid arthritis. Yep, he died of it, suffering, because he said that. So he went from the gift to the curse by saying those words, the world is at my feet. And so be careful. So Paul said, because of the abundance of my revelation. Well, yeah, you wrote 3/4, 2/3 of the New Testament, Paul. I would say that you had a great relationship with the Holy Spirit. I would say that you had daily contact with the Holy Spirit, and daily understanding, revelation of what God put in the Old Testament and translating it into the New Testament. I can just tell. So because Paul had that, that's good chance of being prideful. I think I'd be prideful, to write all these letters in Romans and Corinthians and Galatians and Ephesians and Colossians, and be in charge of these churches and get all these things going, and God is just moving and changing, and yeah, that would be, there's a chance for some pride there, don't you think? I think so. So my power is made perfect. Therefore, most gladly, Paul is saying, I would rather boast in my infirmities, that the power of Christ might rest upon me. So he's saying, I'm glad I've got these weaknesses, because these are the things that allow God to work through me. So let's look at the Greek of some of these words. And this is I'm just going to darken in this is the empty circle. I'm going to now fill in we're in 2 Corinthians 12, 7 through 9. The messenger of Satan is to stop pride. Now for him. And that is a Greek word, number 5229, and it is to be made haughty. Think too much of yourself. All right. Thorn in the flesh. Abundance of revelation, a thorn in the flesh, sent to buffet me. And by the way, that word buffet, it means constant physical harassment. So there was something wrong in his body, in his flesh. Something irritating. Could be a rash. Some people said it was his eyes, but actually Paul goes through a list of a litany of things that happened to him. Remember, shipwreck, night and the day in the deep, they're, a little eye itchy, things like that. I don't think that's Paul. All right, so the thorn in the flesh. Now the flesh is 45:61, a thorn in the flesh. What is he talking about here? He is talking about the supplied by blood part of his being. As a being, I have a soul, a spirit, and a body. Now the body part is the flesh part. I can still be who I am even if I lose a part of my flesh. If you have to have something, your arm is removed, you are still a whole person. You're still complete. You don't lose a part of your personality if you lose a part of your body. You could lose everything except for your heart, your torso, and your head and still be who you are. All right, so so if you can understand that, you could say, well, if I can lose all this and still be me, what happens when the torso and the head die? Well, then you are still you. That is the part of you that goes into eternity. And which way you go is the decision you must make while you're in this body. To be born again. To be born again means it doesn't matter what happens to this flesh. So he's saying the thorn in the flesh. So he's not talking about spiritually. So his spirit man is still strong. During these tests, during these times of trial, the spirit man is being strengthened. The soul man is being strengthened, but the flesh is under attack. So that which can be removed, the substance of the body, which means, the skin, the organs, the substance of the body. And what is the point of this? Well, I got the revelation, okay? You ready for this, Pauline revelation? A gravy separator. Really? Well, for you cooks out there who know what that is, a gravy separator is like a 2-cup measuring cup. But the spout, instead of at the top, is at the bottom. So that when you finish with a roast, you finish with your turkey on Thanksgiving, and you pour the drippings from the bottom of the pan into this gravy separator, the oils and all of the grease and everything from cooking the turkey or the beef will float to the top. And underneath that will be the juices and all of the good flavor. So this gravy separator is set so that when you tip it, the oil stays in it, but the water, that's the brine or what you want to use in making your gravy, comes out from under the grease and pours into another pan. This is good because you want that oil and that grease, because that's what will mix with the flour and to make a roux and things like that, whereas water doesn't. So that's called a gravy separator. So in a way, this is how God works with teaching us about the suffering, is that it's a gravy separator. It separates out the dross. It separates out the things that need to be removed, because obviously when you don't want any water in your roux, and you don't want any oil in your gravy. You want them totally separate. And so God doesn't want certain things in you. He has to separate them out. And when he says, I have separated you out, I have called you unto myself, I have purified you, made you whole, he is talking about your soul and your spirit. Those are two very pure and clean things that God has. So all that's left, that's been separated out, is your flesh, the part that's not going. A good example is, the cross of Jesus Christ had one post in the ground. Anybody ever ask why there's only one post in the ground? I just thought, well, I never really thought about that. Why are you hung on a cross with only one post in the ground? Two posts would be much more steady. Two posts would last a lot longer. Why is there only one post in the ground? Because there's only one thing going to stay here on earth. When you go and you pass, only one thing stays here on the earth, and that is your flesh. The other two parts of you, your soul and your spirit, move to the next level of the game. Move up. So that's why there's only one post on the cross, because only your flesh is stuck here on the earth. The rest of you gets to go. So we're working on the rest of you right now. And Paul is dealing with his flesh. So concerning this, I pleaded with the Lord 3 times that it might depart from me. And he said, my grace is sufficient for you, and my strength is made perfect in weakness. So the thorn is the reminder in the flesh. It is a constant ailment. The flesh is the living flesh of your body, the living part of your body, something that can be removed without a loss of your consciousness. But 769, I'm looking for the word here. Thorn in the flesh. To bear trials and troubles, weakness. Here it is. Okay, my power is made perfect in weakness. All right, that weakness is number 769, which means to bear troubles and trials in a mental state of weakness. So you've got to deal with your flesh. You're going to have a few trials, a few nicks and bangs, but you also have to deal with weakness, state of mind. I'm just tired of this. I just don't want to deal with this. I just don't want to go any further. That kind of thing. I'm exhausted. It's like you're just trotting through the day, waiting for that time when you can pull the sheets over your head and start tomorrow. You just have that feeling of like, I can't go through another day. That's more a mental thing that God is working on. But this word, when he says, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. So through the weakness of your flesh, through the weakness of your mental state of mind, God's expecting that. God is planning on that. You think you're disappointing God when you're weak, when you're hurting, or you think you're letting God down? When you're having an issue with your attitude or your anger or your frustrations or your bitterness, you think that when the dam starts to have the gates open up and the flood's coming out, that you're disappointing God? Oh God, look what we're having to deal with. I am so sorry you have to deal with this again. Not at all. God's planning for that. Because if you'll come to him, run to him and say, I'm overflowing again. I'm having this issue again. I'm hurting again in my shoulder. He's like, okay, I was planning on that. I was ready for that. Come to me, all you that are heavy laden. Come to me, all you that are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Come to me. God's planning on this. God's waiting for this. He even says, my power is going to be even greater because you have the humility and the willingness to come to me and say, I am weak. I am angry. I am frustrated. I've had enough. I don't know what to do. Because that's when your guard is down, your pride is down, and that's when I can get in and make a difference. My power is made perfect in your weakness. And let me tell you what perfect means. Perfect means adding to that which is in want until it is full. That means when God and you and I admit a weakness. So you've got a cup, and it's this full. It's that full. That's as far as you can get it. And you say, God, I am only this full. This is all I am. This is all I've got. God says, in that weakness, I am going to fill the rest. I'm going to fill the rest. Now, you've admitted you've only got this much. But now here's what most people do. Oh, I'm fine. You know, I've got plenty of coffee. I've got plenty of drink. That's okay, God. I'm all right. We're fine. But what God is saying is, if you'll admit you've only got this much and you need this much, I'm ready to jump in there. It says made perfect. It says made perfect, which is number 5048. Perfect, add to that which is in want until it is full. So God isn't saying, well, I'm going to help you with your frustration a little bit today. No, he says, I'm going to help you with whatever's going on until we're through this. That may not be a 24-hour period. It may take weeks or days or months for you to get through that. Now, what are we trying to get through? I don't know if you've written it down yet, but the 5 words that I'm basing this on as far as the sufferings and the growth process of what God is trying to do, I'm just going to read them to you really quick in case you haven't written them down. Just hit pause after I say them. Is education, termination, eradication, production, administration, and submission. So that is our goal. Those are the words that are part of the 6. And this one right here is about eradication. Eradication of everything that tries to get to you. All right, take a second right now. Here's my latest painting. Got a little bit more to do on the beach there, a few little sand dollars and things like that. And all right, so just a moment to think of something else for a moment to get my mind back in gear. That is what we're doing today, the prevention of pride and the understanding. So I hope that works for you today. We're done. Next week will be number 6, to be a minister. Now this one I know is number 6. I know this is the last one just because this is the one that no matter what order you go in, the whole point of these 6 suffers is to be a minister. Whether it's this much of a minister or this much of a minister, whatever your realm is that God has called you to do. And honestly, one of the things that God said was, once you've got your family in order, then I can use you to help the family in the church. Then I can use you to help the family and the people of God. So yes, it does start here. It really does. There's a lot of ministers that have left their children behind. There's a lot of ministers that have left the ministry behind to help their children. And now the children are in ministry, and then like recently we're seeing ministers are sacrificing their children to keep their ministry going. All right, so that's it. I want to say thank you for being with me today. Thank you so much. I do look forward to this. I look forward to next Thursday. And so chat in, let me a message, give me a thumbs up, let me know you're watching. Hey, and don't forget to look back in the list. I've actually got almost 200 views on Don't Sign for the Package, the one that's called Don't Sign for the Package. So that must be really good. And I want you to see that, because that really, really helps. So bless you, love you, I love you, but Jesus loves you more. And have a wonderful, wonderful day.